What is going on, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer and Kyle Kelly live on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel. We are back. We took a couple of weeks off um, for travel and the holidays and whatnot, but we are back live. Live. Hope everyone is doing well. We were in the Thursday 10:30 a.m. Eastern time slots during the football season. Just kind of made the most sense because of Friday travel and whatnot. But with the off season here, we are back to Friday afternoons. Yeah, Kyle, you doing well, my friend?
Yeah, besides my bad hair day, I think I'm doing okay. I'm just following this Alabama coaching search, and
Yeah,
I know
dude.
we have a big day coming up. So, yeah, it's never a dull moment in college football. You thought the January, like really dead period, transfer portals wrapped up, bowl games are finished, no more college football would be a little bit relaxed.
No.
So far, so good, but I know those Alabama fans are going nuts down in Tuscaloosa.
I think like 7 years ago, the Denbrock to Notre Dame news as offensive coordinator would be like top 10 most interesting news of the offseason cycle. In 2023, 2024, is it in the top 100 or top 50? Seriously, like this is absolutely bonkers. Like, oh, Jared Parker becomes Troy head coach and Notre Dame steals Denbrock away from Brian Kelly and LSU. That storyline is crazy. And it's like, does it crack the top 50? So it is nuts these days. So that's just kind of college football right now. And certainly tracking the Alabama search, like you said. Marcus Freeman's name was, kind of thrown around there for a second, but yeah, I think that is not gonna happen. I think we should be okay there. But yeah, folks, hit the thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, live with us, watching back, whatever it might be. It's just a simple click of that button. And it helps support our channel and reach more Notre Dame fans. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you are new here. And if you're listening via podcast, we'd really appreciate it if you left us a nice review, only if you like the show. And yeah, that would be great. So Notre Dame signed currently a top 10 class in the 2024 cycle. They may add one more player in Kevin Humes from Baltimore. But otherwise, 2024 class is done. Do they take another guy from the portal? Remains to be seen. We'll kind of see, like, head coaching changes at different spots. Like, there's a domino effect that's going to happen with Saban leaving. You know, will Alabama guys enter the portal? If they do hire the Washington coach, Washington has a head coaching search. So these things can create a domino effect. Like Kyle said, the portal closes, but doesn't really ever close. I mean, now Alabama players can leave. They have a 30-day window to enter the portal. So again, it's very much kind of to be determined there. But for today's show, we are focusing on 2025 recruiting. So I always like to say, if you tune into this recruiting show, you're a junkie. Like, you love Notre Dame football and recruiting. So we are going to dive into the 2025 class for the Irish and kind of talk about where it stands, who you need to know. So this is something for not only, the diehards, but we kind of want to get in touch with, if you're new following recruiting or if you're just starting to follow this 2025 class. So here is the group so far. It is yep, like Joey says here, please hit the thumbs up on the video. Good to see you, Joey. Um yeah, so Notre Dame currently has 13 commitments, which we can start right there, Kyle. That is a lot of commitments for being 11 months until signing day. I mean, I'm guessing around Notre Dame was probably at like 8 or something this time last year for the 24 class. 13 is a bunch.
Yeah, 4 more than any other school. Oklahoma trailing second. Notre Dame there.
Yeah, so 13's a good bit. And the class is led by Duce Knight, who is outstanding. Currently ranks as the number 37 overall player and the number 4 quarterback, according to the On3 industry ranking. And I'm going to pop up video that I took of him back when I was able to see him in October. Yeah, Kyle, you as high on this young man as I am. I mean, the ceiling for this kid is truly enormous.
I think after watching what Michael Penix has done in Washington last season, especially this last year, there's a lot of excitement with Duce Knight. I know I can't remember if Duce has told you in the past. I feel like he put this out on social media that he kind of like models his game after Penix. He follows him a little bit, being like a left-handed quarterback, and I think Duce Knight can be Notre Dame's Michael Penix in the future. And I'll never forget, I think Duce Knight's birthday might be in December. Um, it was pretty recently. And Marcus Freeman, they sent him that happy birthday video, which I believe Duce tweeted out. And it was a picture of, Marcus and Duce walking in the Irish Athletic Center where the Notre Dame team practices. And I remember Marcus saying that, this is our first picture together, and I hope like our last one will be at the Heisman Trophy ceremony when you're going to win the Heisman. So let's just say Notre Dame has some pretty high expectations for Duce Knight. Penix was a Heisman finalist, and I think that Notre Dame found a quarterback that thinks is capable of being in New York as a Heisman Trophy guy one day.
What I love about Notre Dame's back-to-back quarterback hits here are that CJ and Duce Knight are like polar opposites of players. Like CJ is your very polished, high floor quarterback, right? Like CJ is going to be a solid college quarterback. Who, these days, who knows if like who is actually going to play at what school, right? Because you can leave in a heartbeat and maybe get 3 transfers or something without having to sit out a year. But I think we all agree CJ is going to be really good in college. And then you have Duce, who has, I would say, a pretty freaking higher ceiling than CJ, a lower floor than CJ, wildly athletic, pretty raw. The wildly athletic thing, Kyle, I don't know if you got to watch my my Wednesday show with Tim where we brought on Ethan Long. Tim asked Ethan who's the best basketball player in the class. And Ethan's a really good basketball player, but he's like, yeah, it's probably Duce. So that's telling you something. Guys are always confident in themselves, but he was like, yeah, it's like Duce is fantastic athlete. Again, basketball. It is really impressive, Duce Knight, just overall as an athlete. So I think it's perfect to have these two guys back to back where they are totally different quarterbacks. Like, listen, I get it. Quarterbacks throw the ball and they're going to run a little bit, but just kind of stylistically, the athletic traits, the polish and whatnot, they are different. And I think that's really good for Notre Dame to have in back-to-back classes. So, I mean, this touchdown rush right here, for folks who watch on YouTube, I mean, broke a tackle, 2, 3, 4, like, and trucks the guy to end it. So yeah, love Duce Knight, great young man, committed to Notre Dame over all the big SEC schools, if I recall correctly. He had Bama. I don't know if LSU ended up offering him, but I mean Tennessee, Ole Miss, some of the finalists there. So it was a really nice get for the Fighting Irish, landing Duce Knight. Irish in a really. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I may, I would like to promote the story that I ran last night on Blue and Gold. I talked to Duce Knight's former high school teammate at Nashville Lipscomb Academy, Caleb Beasley, who's a Notre Dame 24 cornerback target that ended up signing with Tennessee. Duce played his first 2 years of high school football in Mississippi at George County. Transferred to Nashville Lipscomb Academy for about a month, played there, was homesick, ended up going back home to finish the remainder of his junior year, which is where your film came from. But I got to see Caleb Beasley down at the Under Armour All-American game in Orlando. I had talked to him a little bit about Duce Knight, and Caleb gave me some great insight into the type of guy Duce Knight is on and off the field. And I ran that story for our premium subscribers over at Blue and Gold last night. And I know our YouTube folks can, if they're not subscribed, get a 2 months for $1 over at Blue and Gold. So feel free to hop on over to Blue and Gold. Never hurts to do a little bit of a plug. Mike and I just aren't YouTube guys or podcast hosts. We do a lot of writing over there. So
yep,
hope you want to check that story out.
Yep, check it out, blueandgold.com. Use promo code UND, $1, 2 months. Defensive back, we're just going to kind of hop all over the place as we on YouTube look at the commit list. Defensive back's in a really good spot. Ivan Taylor, we saw him at cornerback at Irish Invasion. He's committed to Notre Dame as a safety. He can really do anything. So Ivan Taylor, number 72 overall player, the son of Ike Taylor. I mean, yeah, you love those bloodlines. The NFL bloodlines with Notre Dame recruiting these days has been very, very good. Cree Thomas, from the same high school as Ben Morrison, and he kind of plays similarly to Ben Morrison as well. Had a strong junior season. We're very high on Ben Morrison, and then Notre Dame's most recent 2025 commit is Ethan Long, who has a similar play style to a guy named Kyle Hamilton. So that's great. Notre Dame safety recruiting, they've gotten a lot of guys who are kind of like that strong safety, physical, really good tackler. Not as much in the Xavier Watts, like middle of the field safety. Like that's Ethan Long at 6'2", 185. And he's listed at 6'2", but, talking to Tim Hyde, talking to Tom Lemming, like these guys are like, he looks 6'4", just like with his length, his body type. So really good defensive back class. And we're just talking about the commits for Notre Dame right now. We're going to talk about the targets later in the show, like who Notre Dame has on the board and some names to know. But Kyle, you got to be pretty pleased right now with this DB class.
No, I certainly am. It was so exciting for me to see the pickup that they got last month with Ivan Taylor, because I know we've talked on the show so many times before. Notre Dame just doesn't get guys like that out of Florida, at least the public schools down there. And I talked to Ivan Taylor's coach, I think it was yesterday, one of very many phone calls I had. That story will be out. I actually might have a few stories out from that conversation, one of them being this weekend on Blue and Gold. But Ivan was just a perfect fit for Notre Dame, and on the field, he's an excellent player. I like how he translates to maybe that nickel corner position, like a slot guy who's kind of like even a hybrid safety a little bit, just because Ivan fits that mold with the guys that Notre Dame has had at that slot corner position. When you think about Tariq Bracy and then Thomas Harper and now Jordan Hall, who they have in the mix this year from Arizona State, all those guys are under 6 foot, right around 5'10", 5'11". That's exactly where Ivan Taylor is. And one thing about those nickel guys is usually really good football players that are, can diagnose a play, very involved in the run game with them being a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. And I think Ivan Taylor just fits that with his football instincts. And with Ethan Long, I know you mentioned his length, and this is a part of what I talked about in my 5 thoughts that I ran on Blue and Gold after Ethan Long committed. It's really tough to compare guys to Kyle Hamilton. I mean, Kyle Hamilton was just a first-team All-America selection, first-team All-Pro selection. It's just a second-year player in the NFL today. And obviously Hamilton had an outstanding career at Notre Dame, but there are a little bit of similarities just with the length between Long and Hamilton. Trying to this, right here. So despite being 2 inches shorter than Hamilton, Long has 32 and a quarter inch. That's his arm length. Kyle Hamilton has 33 inch arms, so pretty comparable there. Hamilton does have a few inches longer of a wingspan, but Ethan Long has about a 6.5 foot wingspan. So he's a guy that is he's a ball hawk sort of safety. Who can play that like center field, like you said, like Xavier Watts position. Can also play like a strong safety role as well. So I am really excited about the defensive backhaul that Notre Dame has, because I don't think we've seen one like this since probably Kyle Hamilton, I think back in
Yeah.
like 2019.
Yeah, it's crazy how, like, when I started covering Notre Dame, defensive back recruiting was just not it. Like, that was just, and that was not a strength of the team. Like, if you were, I remember like reading loose emoji articles, rest in peace to the GOAT. He would like rank the position groups from best to worst, and corner was usually last. And now it's been a strength of the team with guys like Cam Hart, Ben Morrison, and then you're seeing your Jaden Mickey, your Christian Gray, like it's continuing to look strong in the future as well. So very exciting. And then continuing with this with this class, Kyle, to kind of go through this quickly. A couple running backs committed in Justin Thurman from Tampa Jesuit, a 4-star prospect per the On3 industry ranking, and then Daniel Anderson from Bryant, Arkansas. Notre Dame got both of those guys committed. But I mean, Thurman was in August, and then Anderson a couple hours before the Ohio State game. No receivers committed yet. You got a tight end and James Flanagan, who Kyle has seen at least once, maybe twice in person. Son of Jim Flanagan, a former Notre Dame defensive lineman, and one offensive lineman committed, Will Black, from Connecticut, picked the Fighting Irish in December. The comparison of play style with him and kind of the build is everything and everything like that. How about Joe Alt? That's what my Notre Dame sources are saying. Like, they kind of remind Black reminds them of Joe Alt and looking at the high school film. So that's obviously very exciting. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, on the D line, Irish pretty loaded there. Chris Burgess leading that group, nation's 130 overall player, number 9 edge. So he's someone, I think Kyle and I were talking about this on the phone the other day. It was like, when you talk about defensive linemen, there's always like, here's where you might come in. Here's where we think you're going to end up, right? Because you add on weight and strength when you get to college. So Burgess might look like a Viper right now potentially, but probably see him sliding to the 5 tech when that's all said and done. Kind of same with CJ May. Which one is he between Viper and playing the strong side end spot? He's currently 6'4", 225. CJ May picked the Irish over a lot of SEC schools. Another 4-star prospect there. Joseph Reif from Illinois, probably a 5 tech, 3 tech hybrid. Notre Dame got him committed a day after the Ohio State game, and then you got that true nose and Davion Dixon from Miami, Palmetto, currently a 3-star commit, and he was Notre Dame's first pledge of the class, picking the Irish back in April of 2023. So yeah, it is a solid class. I forgot to mention the linebacker Dominic Kulak, who's we were told the money position, which is kind of what Maris Leafow played this year. So pass rusher, drops, kind of just like a true outside linebacker kind of deal. So yeah, Kyle, any quick feedback before we hear from Augie's locker room?
This is what I was going to say when you started talking about running back, and then I realized it's actually kind of been a theme of the whole class. What I really liked about the 2 running back commits that Notre Dame got is both those guys worked out with Dylan McCullough in person at different Notre Dame camps last June. So Dylan McCullough, highly esteemed running back coach, has success everywhere he's been. I think based off the production in Notre Dame's running backs last 2 years, he's earned every right to pick his guys. And I know both those guys are maybe not the most highly rated guys in the class, but Dylan saw both those guys work out with them in person at Notre Dame last summer, and that's been a theme of this class. A lot of these guys, in fact, the majority of the class, I think, has camped at Notre Dame. Joe Reif, he camped at Notre Dame, earned an offer, committed. Christopher Burgess, he camped at Notre Dame for the Irish Invasion. Ivan Taylor.
Will Black.
Yep. So all those guys, in-person evaluations from the Notre Dame staff, not only like in-person evaluation, but also on their home turf where they
Yeah.
can work them out how they see fit. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
that's the most exciting thing for me is Notre Dame. Not only do they like these guys, they got a really good evaluation on them, and probably feel pretty confident in that, knowing that they push for these guys to end up in the class. So I think there's a reason to be really excited about the start Notre Dame has in
Yeah.
2025.
Now, when I was at the All-American Bowl and was with this two scouting guys at On Three and Charles Power and Cody Belair, um, and whenever the class of 2025 would come up, they would basically tell me like, Mike, I mean, we are so far like we have not been like doing a whole lot of focus on the 2025 class. That's going to be, I think, in February, in a couple weeks from now, that they dive back into the junior film, because like they're so much more focused on 2024 and making sure that they get that class ranked exactly where they want. So they basically are like, look, where those guys are ranked right now, it's really not that important. Like we're going to dive into that soon when the 2024 class wraps up. So with that in mind, is there anyone on the commit list that just stands out to you, Kyle, that's like he's ranked here right now? And I could pull up the industry comparison. Or he's ranked here by On Three right now, but I really think he's going to shoot up in the rankings. When On Three gets to reevaluate. And I'll add before you go, Kyle, I never like to tell people, hey, this guy is going to move up in the rankings, because you just don't know. This is a very subjective business, folks. Like I might think something that Kyle doesn't. Nick Saban, well, I can't use Saban anymore. Marcus Freeman might really like a kid, but Ryan Day doesn't, or vice versa. Like this it's very subjective. So, but with that in mind, is there anyone on the commit list that you're like, man, I think he's going to move up?
Yeah, two guys, and the two of the three most Notre Dame commits, Will Black and Ethan Long, for me, both guys from Connecticut. Will Black's originally from, I think, Ontario, London,
Yeah.
Ontario. He boards in Connecticut, and actually Ethan Long, he somewhat boards at Brunswick School. He actually lives with Notre Dame 25 offensive tackle target Maddie Augustine during the school year. So Ethan Long's not living with his family. He's he does in the summer and off season breaks and everything like that. But during the school year, he's living with Augustine. But anyway, I think both those guys, I mean, definitely higher than what they're ranked right now. I looked at, watch Will Black's film. I like his film better than Maddie Augustine. I saw Owen Streebing in person. I think Will Black's film was very comparable to that. And first thing I wrote my 5 thoughts on Monday when Ethan Long committed, and I said, I know what the rankings say now, but I expect him to shoot up the board. And I was glad to hear, the very well-renowned recruiting analyst Tom Lemming, who's done this for probably 6 decades by now. He thinks Ethan Long is a high 4-star, potential 5-star guy.
Yeah.
So that made me feel better about my evaluation of Long.
Yeah, that's the one for me that stands out the most, is Ethan Long. Like stuck up for sure. All right. So that is, let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about with the, okay. So we're going to go to Burgess and then our Mike versus Kyle arguments. Not really an argument, article discussion. We're going to go to that, but first, discussion. We're going to hear from Augie's Locker Room. Definitely one of our cool sponsors that we have here at Blue and Gold. So folks, when you are in town, or if you're a local in South Bend, you really need to make time for Augie's Locker Room, especially since he has moved to a brand new location. The store is located at 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend. It's right down the street from Notre Dame. So yeah, folks, whether it's you're not getting back to town until the football season, or if you're coming for a basketball game or whatever it is, go check out Augie's Locker Room. They have a wide selection of Notre Dame Stadium pieces. You got jerseys, helmets, autographs, one-of-a-kind rocking items. Augie's always getting new stuff in his store. So if it's been a year or two since you've been, you got to go back to see what he's got. They have exclusive Joe Montana signed items, famous sculptor Jerry McKenna's replicas of the bronze statues around the stadium. And if Auggie doesn't have something in store that you want, he can go find it for you. You guys have heard the story about Mike Goolsby. There's a missing jersey that he wanted. Auggie found it in 20 minutes. I'm seriously, guys. He's amazing. So check out auggiesLockerRoom.com for the online store and give Auggie a call, 574-277-6363. Again, brand new store location, 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend. auggiesLockerRoom.com. All right, folks. So Chris Burgess, when I was talking to you, Kyle, about the show today, you brought up my Justin Scott comparison. I don't really remember what that meant. So yeah, what were you thinking here on Chris Burgess you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll let you kind of lead the conversation here because I remember we were just bouncing ideas off each other more or less
Yeah.
when we were discussing Chris Burgess's potential commitment destination. And I remember you said this kind of felt a lot like the Justin Scott recruitment about a year ago, where Justin was making a decision. It was going to be Notre Dame. That was the decision privately that was going to be made public, and that never happened. So just kind of
Yeah.
want to
Yeah. Okay. I know.
know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So the Scott one last year was like he set the commitment date for January, whatever it was. But usually when these kids set commitment dates, they know where they're going. And the Scott one felt rushed to me. So it was no surprise when he pushed it back. Like, if he was going to stick with that commitment date, it probably would have been Notre Dame. But would he have signed with the Fighting Irish? Probably not. So the only thing that was like similar was that Burgess sets a January commitment date, doesn't know where he's going. And you would agree with me, Kyle. It did feel like he kind of decided earlier than we all anticipated. Now, did he rush it? I don't know. But I do feel like Burgess committing to Notre Dame has a much more likelihood of sticking with him actually signing with the Irish this winter than Scott, because I think Burgess really does genuinely love Notre Dame, whereas Scott, I don't think did. It's a weird thing. I've said this a bunch of times on Justin Scott. Like, he almost committed to Notre Dame, but I don't think he really loved Notre Dame. I don't follow the visits. He visited Notre Dame, twice in a year and a half or something like that. Whereas Burgess has been to South Bend, 6 times, including 3 times last year alone. So I feel pretty good about Burgess sticking with the Irish. Yeah, so that was it. I just thought there was similar comparisons there with Chicago, defensive lineman, January commitment, locking in the commitment date without knowing where they're going to go yet. But I kind of think for the recruiting aspects, that's where the comparison ends.
Yeah, I feel like I should be kind of fair here because like I think I introduced this topic like I majorly disagreed with you, like no way. But I remember when we talked, I was like, you're right. This does feel a lot like the Justin Scott recruitment because same teams were in the battle.
Yeah.
And I would just say that I do think Chris Burgess made a little bit too quick of a decision. But
Just
even
like
though
based on what the vibes were in his recruitment. That's what you
all
mean by that?
yeah, a lot of moving parts. I know he had a tough time narrowing down his. I think he had about 30 Power 5 offers. He had a really hard time narrowing it down to 10 schools. And I think the thing with Burgess is he wanted to go to Notre Dame. Notre Dame was his number one school, but I think he just kind of similar to Scott last year when he didn't make his commitment. He just wanted to see other schools. But I think the major difference for me with Burgess and Scott, and I know you kind of already brought this up. If you want to bring up Burgess's profile real quick and just jump to the visit section and expand that, Chris Burgess has visited colleges since before his freshman season. I mean, I think he has about 30 visits, unofficial visits, to multiple schools. And all his top ones he's been to multiple times. He's not only camped at his top schools, but he's also attended a major recruiting event in the offseason and he's attended a game day. So Chris Burgess has seen everything he needs to
Yeah.
make a decision. And let me be clear, this was 100% an Ohio State versus Notre Dame battle. This is Notre Dame, Ohio State for months. Michigan was in there as another team that's made the decision difficult at various points of his recruitment. Michigan also made a really late push that also had Burgess kind of rethinking things. But Notre Dame, I felt like this, and this is just based on what I know. Notre Dame's it's been the number one school for him for a while.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to mention is, about a possible flip to Ohio State, because I think that's what a lot of Notre Dame fans are going to be concerned about is Burgess, much like Scott, possibly ending up with the Buckeyes. Of course, Justin Scott ended up flipping from Ohio State, signing with Miami. I'll put this out here right now. I know Burgess had um, LSU and Alabama's finalists. He's never going to those schools. Chris Burgess is staying in the Midwest, unlike Scott, who was had this portrayal being a mama's boy and playing close to home was going to be important. Obviously, it was not as important as what we thought. That's not the case with Burgess. Burgess is going to end up playing his college football in the Midwest. I do believe it's going to be at Notre Dame. But my final point is the reason I'm not as worried with Ohio State is because they're a defensive line board. They already have one commit who they picked up earlier this week, a guy that Notre Dame offered, and Zahir Mathis from Philadelphia. He's an elite recruit from the Mid-Atlantic area, top 55 guy. He's a defensive lineman. And then Ohio State's also tracking really well for an edge rusher that also visited Notre Dame, who's an in-state guy in Ohio, Justin Hill from Cincinnati, Winton Woods. I'd like him to end up at Ohio State eventually. And I was texting with Matt Parker, our guy from Letterman Row that does an outstanding job covering Ohio State recruiting. And he mentioned another guy to me that he thought I should keep tabs on, and that is Cedric Works. He's from the Clayton, Ohio, Northmont High School, Clayton area, Northmont High School. He's an on 300 guy, top 20 edge rusher in the class, a high 4-star guy that a lot of Power 5 schools are starting to get involved. Ohio State hasn't offered yet. He brought the name up to me as Notre Dame possibly offering. I said, I don't think Notre Dame's going to go after this kid. They got 4 D-line commits, and they have their priority target remaining in Damian Shanklin. But anyway, I'm not too worried about Burgess flipping Ohio State just because of the position that the Buckeyes are in for multiple D linemen, and I think Notre Dame's also in a pretty great position where they stand as well.
Okay, and then the last thing I want to touch on was our Mike versus Kyle, kind of as we get into. Actually, we're gonna save that. We're gonna save that one for when we talk about the targets. The next thing I did want to get into was the class rankings, because I saw a tweet from after I think it was long committed from Pete Sampson tweeted out, 24/7 Notre Dame is the number 1 class. Rivals Notre Dame is the number 1 class, and on 3 was, let's see, what are they, 6 right now in the 2025 class, and everyone's like, on 3, these rankings suck. All right, so this is the reason I wrote an article about this, kind of dunking on that. Listen, how many times, guys, does Notre Dame have the number 1 class early on? Every cycle, right?
Yeah, almost always.
Every freaking cycle. I've been covering Notre Dame. I remember writing in the 2021 class, 2022, 2023, 2024. Why? Why does Notre Dame always have the number 1 class according to Rivals in 24/7 early on? Because they have the most commits. Every year, Jay Meeks, every single year, it's like Notre Dame, number 1 recruiting class. And it's like, it's really cool according to those sites. But the problem is Notre Dame never finishes with the number 1 class. So I've been calling those rankings early on. It's a popularity contest. Rival, I don't intricately know the 24/7, how they do their team rankings, but I worked at Rivals for 9 years. And it's a point system. Up to it takes your top 20 commitments, and there's a point system. If you're a 5.5, it's 60. 5.6, it's 75. Whatever it is. 5.7 is 90. I don't remember. Something like that. That's what it is. It's a popularity contest. You have the most. I remember one class, Texas Tech was number one for a while, and it's like they had 20 commits when everyone else had like 3 or something. It was ridiculous. Texas Tech's not even in the top 25 when it's all said and done. So On3 does, it's an average, right? So they currently are taking your top 3 commits because that is the average number of commits per Power 5 school. How many Power 5s are there? 50 or something? Notre Dame has 12, Oklahoma has 9, Ohio State has 6, maybe, Baylor has 2, and then Clemson has 4. They add all of them up and average it out. So the average number of commits for Power 5 school is 3, right? So this ranking just takes your top 3 commits, and that's how it is. And Notre Dame sitting there at 6, right? Which, could Notre Dame finish this cycle 6? That makes a lot more sense, right? Like the way this top 10 is right now, it's not perfect. I mean, it's really difficult to accurately rank 11 months in advance, but this makes a lot more sense to me, right, folks, than the popularity contest. Like, it tries to say, based on how good the players are right now, this is what it could be like in December. Like, this makes more sense to me. LSU, Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Oregon, Notre Dame, Auburn, Clemson, Oklahoma, Michigan. That seems much more likely to me than Notre Dame finishing with the number 1 class, because it's not going to happen. I mean, Notre Dame has way too many 3-star guys already it's 5 3-stars, according to the On3 industry ranking right now. I mean, that's a ton. I mean, it's hard to sign a number 1 class when, 30, 40% of your class is 3 stars. It's just not going to happen. So that is why the ranking is what it is. And Mason Plummer can say L. You just need a reality check that Notre Dame's not going to sign the number 1 class in the country. And that's why I think the On3 industry ranking is by far the best, because it's much more accurate at this point of the cycle, right? Like, to compare it to what it could be at the end of the year. Notre Dame's not going to sign the number 1 class. Sorry.
But if there was a year that Notre Dame could sign its top 5 class, I think this year could be the one, just because there's a lot of parity in college football. With Nick Saban leaving Alabama, I think we expect Alabama to naturally take a step back, no matter who the head coach is there. Georgia's just turned into an absolute monster on the recruiting trail. Like, the guys they recruit, I saw these guys down in Orlando. I mean, they're just different. I mean, those guys are unbelievable. But I think and the most important point being is, and this is kind of why I thought Notre Dame could finish with a top 5, top 3 class in 2023, was because that's when they were trying to land a 5-star quarterback, Dante Moore. And if me, the show, I always accidentally talk about Duce Knight as a 5-star, because he's not one yet, but I do think he'll end up in that conversation. I think having a 5-star quarterback carries a lot of weight, not only in the rankings, but also with the type of guys Notre Dame can bring in. So I think if there was a year where we talk about Notre Dame ended up top 5 recruiting class, I feel this is going to be the one.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to dive into some of the targets for the Irish in the 2025 class. But first, we're going to hear from our sponsors over at My Perfect Franchise. So as always, folks, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and they are you a displaced corporate executive wanting to put your career in your own hands? Are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? If you're answering yes, Andy Ludicky can help you out. He's a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using Andy's expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. So call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. And best of all, folks, his services are 100% free to use. So what do you have to lose? Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. Give Andy Ludicky a call, 404-973-9901, myperfectfranchise.net. So that Mike versus Kyle article, it was the biggest positional need or something like that, right? Do you remember what the headline was, Kyle?
Yeah, just basically since Notre Dame is so far along in the 25 class, just kind of what we think is the top remaining positional need.
Yeah, which it's kind of just media fodder. I mean, they're all important. But you took receiver partly because it's a very important position in modern football, and they don't have a commit yet at the spot, so it made sense.
Yeah, they have an elite quarterback, and the guy has no one to throw it to yet. But that's why we're 11 months out from signing day. And the biggest thing I wrote about being my concern is just the current state of the Notre Dame wide receiver room. It's in a much better position than it was a month and a half ago, where Notre Dame had a mass exodus, but they replaced all those guys with guys that are going to be leaving after this season. Jay Harrison, Chris Mitchell, and Bo Collins. Yeah, all the guys they had transfer in, they're playing on their last year of college eligibility. And then like Jaden Thomas and Deion Colsey, like last year probably. I mean, how much longer are those guys, two guys from Georgia, going to hang around South Bend? I feel like that was the case with the guy a couple years ago, Austin, Kevin Austin, that ended up, leaving Notre Dame a year early to go to the NFL. I'm not saying that Austin's a similar now mindset to Thomas and Colsey, but still, my point being is there's going to be a lot of turnover in that room after the season. And, I know that every year Notre Dame is probably going to be chasing wide receivers in the transfer portal because there's always a lot of them in there. We've seen a lot of wide receiver turnover the last few cycles in the portal. But still, I think Notre Dame's, one thing they focus on, and this is something Marcus Freeman has said publicly so many times, is they're going to build their team, the heart and soul of their team through the high school ranks, which is kind of interesting because I feel like the heart of the team has really been transfers lately, especially this cycle when you think about the key positions on Notre Dame's team, Riley Leonard and, defensive lineman R.J. Oben, who's going to replace Javonte Jean-Baptiste. And Baptiste was arguably like the MVP on this Notre Dame team, at least from a transfer edition standpoint. But just kind of summarize my point. I think Notre Dame, they need some wide receivers, and they got a lot of offers out there. There's a lot of guys that have been to campus that are wide receiver targets. Some new guys are on the board. They just offered another wide receiver yesterday who his father played with Ike Taylor, the son or the father of Notre Dame safety commit Ivan Taylor. So there are a lot of options on the receiver board, and I just think right now it's the most important need in the class.
Yeah, I went with offensive line just because I think the opportunity for Notre Dame to sign a crazy good offensive line class is right ahead of them. They've got Will Black committed, and then you guys got, and then they got guys like Jack Lang on the board from Missouri, who's an outstanding offensive tackle. You have Owen Streberg from Wisconsin, who we've believe has been trending to the Irish for quite a while, and like Notre Dame in that recruitment. You have Matty Augustine. Those three guys we just talked about are all of it. Well, Augustine's a maybe, but you got Lang's visiting for January 20th and Streebig. Will Black, I believe, is going to be there on January 20th as well. So huge Junior Day recruiting weekend. Next Friday, our show will be previewing that for sure. So that's going to be an easy one for us to play. We're going to preview that. But yeah, so I just think that if they do a 3-man offensive tackle class or offensive line class, really, and you get 3 of those 4 guys, and you already have one on the board in Will Black, and then you got Lang, Augustine, Streebig. I just think you have the opportunity to sign an outstanding group. So we're going to transition into talking about the targets. So you have your quarterback locked in and Duce Knight. 2 running backs committed. James Simon, I report about him at blueandgold.com in a Lucky Charms article last night. Simon has said that Notre Dame's recruiting him the hardest. He's an LSU lean according to the RPM at On3, but keep an eye on James Simon. I don't really know exactly what the Irish are planning to do. Would they really take 3 running backs in the class? I'm not sure what that looks like, but Notre Dame is very much in the mix for James Simon. Keep an eye on him, and I really think he's the only other running back to know at this time. Now, receiver, it's wide open. You got Jamie French, the 5-star. Notre Dame would love to flip him from Alabama, probably long shot. Quincy Porter from Bergen Catholic. Haven't really heard a ton about him recently, but he's spoken highly about Notre Dame in the past and visited last spring. Talon Taylor, a local guy. I mean, I think he'd be a great get for the Irish. Recruitment still kind of seems in its early stages. You have Dalen McCutcheon visiting for junior day. Derek Meadows, I like Notre Dame to land him from Las Vegas. Cooper Perry, not really sure where that recruitment stands. I logged a prediction for him to land at Notre Dame last spring. Don't really feel great about that. I mean, Kobe Howard, I think Notre Dame would have a really good shot with him. Not really sure where he stands on their board, but he's definitely one to monitor. Raiden Vines Bright, who just transferred from his school in Arizona down to IMG. Kyle and I are hearing really good things about where the Irish are at with him. You got Jerome Bettis Jr., of course, the Irish legacy, his father being Jerome Bettis Sr. Love where Notre Dame stands out with him. He'll be visiting next weekend. And then the newest offer is Elijah Burris from DePaul Catholic in New Jersey. I got to interview him yesterday, and I'm planning to write that article at Blue and Gold today. His father is Plexico Burris. So it was actually really cool. Burris was, when I was interviewing, I asked him, hey, what do you know about Notre Dame? And he said, I've been watching the program for a while. And he said, I grew up watching Chase Claypool. And I'm like, man, forget how young these kids are. And I was like, well, I grew up watching your dad, and he got a kick out of that. Watching Plex with the Giants was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's a wide open receiver board, but I mean, I think the biggest names to know right now, if I had to pick 3, would be Bettis, Vines Bright, and then Derek Meadows right now.
What about Dalen McCutcheon, who's coming for that junior day event?
If you made me pick 3, that's the 3, but McCutcheon, if you made me pick 4, then he'd be in there.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about this in my Notre Dame 3-2-1 column on Blue and Gold on Thursday. These junior day events have a lot of success. I remember last year, the word out of Notre Dame was they thought they were going to land every guy that was on campus. Yeah. Predictions were flying off the board for all those guys to end up at Notre Dame, and it usually ends up historically where about half the guys on campus end up in Notre Dame's class. That was the case last year. I think they had 6 targets on campus: Styles Prescott, Tay Johnson, and somebody else ended up all committing to Notre Dame later down the road. So I think about half the guys this time around are going to be on a commit watch, and usually sometime in the spring is when those commitments happen. They're usually not right away. So I'll be interested to see, because you don't really get guys from Lucas, Lovejoy, Texas very often. It's kind of ironic because last year McCutcheon's teammate Peyton Pierce visited Notre Dame that weekend, and we all thought Pierce was going to Notre Dame. It was like basically all said and done. And then James Laurinaitis went to Ohio State, and that kind of wrapped things up there because Laurinaitis offered him at Ohio State, and Pierce is a Buckeye now. So I'm excited to see what happens the turnout next weekend, because I think it's crazy because with 13 commits, I mean, this class is already halfway done, and
a little bit more.
And as you were kind of just already running down the offer sheet, Notre Dame's got their targets. They got their guys. They've brought them to campus on multiple occasions, and that'll also be the case next weekend. So I'm mostly excited, as you were starting to say, about what ends up at the wide receiver position, because I think that's the one where just multiple different things could happen.
Yeah. Tight end, Notre Dame offered Lincoln Cure back in the fall, but I know there was a prediction for him to land at Kansas State. That would certainly make sense. Notre Dame had Nate Roberts committed. He decommitted after a month. And then I really think it's just going to be James Flanagan. I think they're going to probably just end up with him in the 2025 class for tight ends. But we'll see. I think that's kind of to be determined. We talked about the offensive tackles. I think really the 3 names to know are Streebig, Lang, and Augustine. In addition to Will Black, who's committed to the Fighting Irish. And then, defensive line, with them having 4 commits already. I really think well, again, this is also to be determined, but I think the biggest name to know right now is this Damian Shanklin from Warren Central in Indianapolis. He's been to Notre Dame a handful of times, twice in October and then in December as well. And he's coming to Junior Day, January 20th, Kyle.
Yep, that'll mark 4 visits in 4 months for him.
Yeah, so I think the Irish are in a good spot there. I know he grew up really liking Ohio State, but I think that the Fighting Irish lead there, and Buckeyes haven't offered yet. And as Kyle talked about earlier on their defensive line board, they have a bunch of guys that they're in the mix for. So right now, I think that, as I scroll, you guys see there's a bunch of names there, but I do think that Damian Shanklin is the top one to know at this point in time. Moving to the linebackers, this is kind of like receiver where it's a wide open board. Nasir White, I don't think is from Modern Day. I don't think he's visited campus yet, but he's definitely on the wish list, as is Noah McKell from Southern California, considered a USC lean. Notre Dame loves him. You got Jeremiah Owusu Koromosa's younger. It is they're brothers, right?
Yes,
Nathan, Nathaniel Owusu Boateng. He's one of the nation's best players. He's down at IMG Academy currently. Again, folks, there's a bunch of guys to know. Christian Jones, Gavin Nix for sure, Anthony Sacca. I think Notre Dame leads for him. Brett Clatterbaugh. Again, guys, you have one committed in Dom Hulak, but and Ko Kia. I logged a prediction for him, and you did as well in the past week, and he's visiting campus today. And I think the Irish are in a good spot for Kahanu Kia's younger brother. So, if you get Ko Kia and Dominic Hulak, maybe they go up to 4 linebackers. We'll kind of see. But what are your thoughts on the linebacker board right now?
One name you did not mention that I will be monitoring to see how this plays out is Madden Faremo from California, SoCal. This is a very intriguing recruitment because Madden he very much keeps to himself. He does not show his cards. It's a very private recruitment. I talked to his coach yesterday. His coach shared the exact same sentiment, but kind of the feeling I'm getting behind this one is it's another Notre Dame, USC, and Ohio State battle.
Okay.
Similar to
Sounds
another
familiar.
Southern California linebacker from last cycle, Kingston Viliamuasa. I know you know Kingston really well, and Kingston's a very soft-spoken guy, a little bit forthcoming about his recruitment. But that's one that I'll be interested to see because I know Ohio State absolutely loves Faremo. He is probably their number one guy on the board. They're making a massive push for him. But I know Notre Dame is trying to stay involved there. They're hoping for Faremo for a visit last summer. So don't know, man. This could be another Kingston Viliamuasa recruitment where Faremo's a very, very faith-driven person as well. So that's a name that doesn't get talked about a lot just because of how guarded his recruitment is. But I'm just putting that out there now that's a name that Notre Dame fans should continue to familiarize themselves with.
Okay. And then wrapping up on the defensive backboard, Trey McNutt from Shaker Heights, Ohio. Wrote an article about him this week. I think we would agree Ohio State probably leads for him, but Notre Dame's right there, and he visited campus a few times. Dallas Golden, I think Notre Dame leads for him currently. Devin Williams from Georgia is visiting next weekend. Mark Zachary is visiting Notre Dame next weekend from Indy Ben Davis. And this is in addition to having Cree Thomas committed at corner. And those are the big names to know on the board. There's a bunch of guys, but it's really Dallas Golden from Tampa Berkeley Prep. You got Trey McNutt, probably a long shot for the Irish, but considering most people believe he's going to end up at Ohio State, but we'll see. And then you got Dallas Golden from Florida. I like the Irish there. Currently haven't logged a pick, but don't be surprised if that goes in. He's visiting for January 20th as well. There's just so many guys visiting. It's hard to keep them all straight and remember. So, yeah, all right, Golden, Devin Williams, Mark Zachary. There's 3 of your 4 top cornerback targets, and they're all visiting the next weekend. So Irish are in a pretty good spot in corner recruiting.
And this is similar to defensive line, where Ohio State's actually helping Notre Dame out here because they just landed a 5-star cornerback commitment, Devin Sanchez from Texas. They're getting another. They're trending toward another 5-star commitment, and Dorian Brew, who was actually supposed to end up at Notre Dame about a year ago. He was kind of on commit watch after an outstanding junior day visit. He lived in Ohio. He moved down to Texas to play with his father, who's an assistant coach, I believe, at the school he currently attends. He sent a commitment day. He's trending toward Ohio State, and Ohio State already has a third cornerback who's their like slot in the class, Blake Woodby from St. Francis Academy. And I was also texting with Matt Parker, and he said that Ohio State is, they would actually take Trey McNutt as a safety. So I wonder if Notre Dame can take advantage there if McNutt wants to play corner and Notre Dame continues to target him at corner. But the other fallout here was Mark Zachary that Ohio State loves and Notre Dame loves as well. But I don't know if there's a position for Mark Zachary in that, a spot for him. And if you're Mark Zachary, why do you want to go to a place where there's already 3 top 100 guys and 2 of them being 5-stars when you can come be the guy at Notre Dame? And I know he loves Notre Dame too. So, yeah, I think that it's you don't want to like phrase it as Notre Dame is getting like Ohio State's like leftovers, but because all these guys they're really really talented guys, but the way Ohio State is recruiting on defense this cycle is starting to help Notre Dame.
And then wrapping up with the safety board again, Notre Dame has commitments from Ivan Taylor and Ethan Long, and I really think it's Jadon Blair is the guy to know moving forward. That Notre Dame loves and has had on campus, I believe a couple times before. And it was for the Ohio State game last year, but I think the Irish are in a really good spot there. Notre Dame sources seem to be pretty optimistic. I know Penn State's a big player in that recruitment, but yeah, Jadon Blair. He told me last night, I was texting with him, he had a few visit dates scheduled. I think it was like South Carolina and Penn State or something, but not Notre Dame in January, but would anticipate, for like a March weekend or spring game that he'll probably get back to campus. And then just scrolling this athlete list, no one's really jumping to the top of my mind to discuss. So yeah, that kind of wraps up the rundown of the class. Again, we didn't talk about every single name, but I think that kind of breaks down the top ones to know at this point. So like Kyle talked about it's 13 commits. It's a little over half full. Notre Dame's been taken, in that 22 to 24 range of high school guys, and then going to that like 6 to 8 or 9 range in the transfer portal, about 30 guys that they're bringing in per, transfer portal plus high school recruiting group. So, 31 right now for the 2024 group of 23 high school guys. It is 23, right? 23? Yeah, and
the
then
last 2 songs.
Yeah, and then 8 right now in the portal, and it could be, maybe if they're able to get Kevin Humes, that could be 24. And then again, maybe they are able to get someone else from the transfer portal. I think that's kind of to be determined. My guess is no, but again, don't really know at this point. So many moving parts in college football. So I think it's a really exciting time to be a Notre Dame football fan. If that On3 industry ranking spot of 10 holds for the Fighting Irish, where they're at in the 2024 class, again, ranked number 10, that's be back-to-back-to-back top 10 classes. And then if Notre Dame's able to do that again in 2025, sign another top 10 class, that's something Notre Dame's never done, signing 4 straight top 10 classes in the the internet era of rankings, and that's per the On3 industry ranking, which On3 obviously wasn't around since, before 2021. That was the first cycle that On3 ranked, but the industry ranking still takes, the Rivals and 24/7 and ESPN rankings for that formula. So, 06 to 08, Notre Dame signed 3 straight top 10 classes, but that's the only time they've ever done that. Again, in the internet recruiting era, if you can, dig up some, newspapers from, when Notre Dame did that in the Lou Holtz era, I would love to see it. But again, we're just talking about the internet era here. So again, recruiting for the Fighting Irish in a really good spot. And our YouTube channel here is in a really good spot as well. Just hit 25,000 subscribers recently. Absolutely love it. Thank you guys for your support. So that is going to wrap up today's show. Hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to our channel for more content. If you're like, Mike, don't end the show. Don't end the show. Listen, I posted a video of Tyler Horka yesterday that you can watch. Go rewatch, or if you haven't watched yet, the Wednesday show with Tim Hyde. That was really good, reacting to the Nick Saban news. And some more Notre Dame football discussions. And that Ethan Long interview was fantastic. So like Jeremy says here, like and subscribe, folks. Really appreciate you for tuning in. And as always, we will catch you next time.